Creatures of the Night, it's your girl Tati. Let's talk about Dark Side of the Ring Season 6, Episode 2, Ludvig Borga, the Hellraiser from Helsinki. This episode, we are talking about professional wrestler Tony Helmy, who was a real-life villain. For this episode, we do have Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, we have Tatanka, we also have Tony's ex-wife, and along with people who knew him from his native country of Finland. Now, some of y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I might not even remember who the hell Ludvig Borga was, but he debuted in 1993 in the WWF. He was brought in to be what Vince McMahon was obsessed with, those anti-American heels to help those baby faces get over. One of the reasons why he was chosen, y'all know Vince McMahon has that little obsession with those big looking muscular guys, so he had that look. And although he had that look, Jim Ross says that, we really didn't put much homework into who this guy really was. So at some point, it became an issue with him being part of the WWF pretty quickly. Now, in order for him to have a feud with Lex Luger, he had to go through Tatanka. Tatanka obviously being a Native American, and you want to get people from America riled up? Well, have the man coming from Finland, who's an anti-American, beat the Native American. And not only did he just beat him, but he also beat him by putting one finger on his chest while the referee counted to 3. Now, we do have Jim Ross, who's like, look, we didn't really put our homework into this guy. We ended up pretty much just looking at him, seeing what it is that he can do, and hiring him. And what the issue was that he was a racist. He had a Nazi tattoo, an SS tattoo on his calf, which is something that he didn't have to show in terms of TV due to his gear, and who would allow that anyway. But it didn't take too long before they realized about him having that tattoo, and he became very standoffish with the talent backstage. And with that, the company was like, damn, we made a mistake hiring him, especially from a moral standpoint. So Ludvig Borga was born in Finland. His father was from Finland, his mother was Swedish, and I don't know too much about this, but apparently there's an issue with that, at least during that time in Finland, where if you were to be of Swedish origin, then that you would be facing discrimination because of that. So I'm not sure what the issue was when it came to being of Swedish nationality, but it was something that he was discriminated against, so he tried his best to hide that from people. Now, his parents had divorced when he was 2 years old, and they ended up having him have a pretty rocky childhood, especially with both of them dealing with alcoholism. Now, what ended up happening here is by the time he was 14, 15 years old, he ended up leaving the home and going to live with a friend of his, where they went to the gym, they started lifting weight and learning how to fight. And at some point, he earned the name the Viking on the street. Now, there was even an article about him and his friend, who's also on this episode, who is talking about Ludvig Borga, where they were in bar fights and they ended up talking about them on the newspaper. So these guys were no motherfucking joke. Now, Ludvig had an obsession with being a star. He got inspired from the movie Taxi Driver and decided that he was going to move to the U.S. He was going to be famous. And he ends up moving to the U.S. and he meets his ex-wife. Her name is Dee Dee. She's also on the show. And she talks about how she fell in love with him, but he had this obsession with just making it as some type of star. So he goes on to tell people that he was this big boxer back in Finland, which he did have experience was, but I think he overdid it in terms of how big of a boxer he was. He started going to Gold's Gym and really putting in that work so he can build his physique and have that look. He did end up getting some commercial gigs and also being on a couple of TV shows. But after, talking about how he was a boxer, he ended up getting a role going over to New Japan. Now, he goes on over to Japan. He has that look that they're looking for. He is on all type of steroids coming from Russia. And even steroids that are meant for fucking horses. So he's doing that just to get in this tip-top shape to have this look that he's looking for. Now, after he goes to New Japan, he's going over there. He has that look, that foreign look that the Japanese crowd do like. And he's not really that experienced. He did get a chance to do a little something over in UWF, but not too much experience. And they showed some clips of some boxing matches that he had while he was over there. Now, while he's there, he's getting heavily into the steroids, drugs, alcohol, and even ends up having a big fight with Scott Norton. And at this point, New Japan is just like, damn, we need these bitches up in here, but we got to get rid of Ludvig Borga because, well, he is very problematic, and so they end up letting him go. So now Ludvig comes back to the United States, and he is telling people that things didn't work out for him in Japan because, well, they're racist and they don't like Finnish people. Now, according to those who were in New Japan during that time, they did state that it was due to him being a racist. Obviously, he had that SS tattoo on his leg, and he has said some racist comments and discriminatory things, and Scott Norton, being a stand-up guy, wasn't going to stand up for any of those comments. Now, he goes home and he's back to doing the same drugs and everything. But this time he got caught cheating. So his wife was like, you know what, bitch, I'm out of here. So they end up splitting and getting a divorce. He goes to the WWF and he has a run, which was less than a year. But hey, you know, the check cleared and he got paid. And the situation is that he was not connecting with the crowd. Even heels, when you don't like them, you like to boo them, there still has to be some type of connection where people want to take the effort to even boo your ass. And at some point, it was just like, that connection was just non-existent. People just really wasn't reacting. And to be honest, like, even at this point, is there anything that y'all really remember about Ludvig Borga? So when he ends up getting injured at an MSG show, he sent home to recover, and they let his ass go, and rightfully so. Now, after this, he does go on to do UFC. Now, he ends up having one match against Randy Couture. Now, for this match, though, he barely got himself into shape. He barely did any training, kind of thinking, like, if I did wrestling, then I can do UFC. And that's a thing that a lot of wrestlers have, where they have this mindset, well, I did wrestling, I can do this. And we've seen this time and time again, how that doesn't work out for wrestlers turned UFC fighters. So he only had one match, and that match lasted less than a minute. Now, after that didn't work out, he ends up getting married to a Finnish woman, and unfortunately, his house gets raided not too long after. The cops came in and raided his home due to him trafficking illegal substances and illegal firearms, and he ended up going to jail. When he went to jail, he got locked up. He was taken under the protection of the Aryan Brotherhood, because obviously they notice when they see their own, and he was protected there. But however, due to a firearm conviction, illegal firearm conviction, he was aborted back to Finland. And while he's there, he's like, you know what? I still want to be famous. So he's doing whatever he can so that he can be famous. So he goes on to doing what do you call it? You remember that show, The American Gladiator? So they had their own version of that, and he turns out to be pretty popular on that show. He ends up having a song that came out that became popular, so then he released a whole album. And at this point, the Finnish people are looking at him like some type of second coming of Christ, I guess. They really, really enjoy him, and he's becoming popular. And to really make things, I guess, more popular for himself, to really be out there in the public eye, he ends up not only getting some like movie, he was in Die Hard 3, and he ends up doing like commercials and things like that, but then he decides, you know what, I'm going to get elected to be part of Parliament. So I forgot to mention this. How could I forget to mention this? Aside from him having that SS tattoo, he also had a tattoo right above his ass, okay? Right above his ass, where it says exit only. So you mean to tell me you are a racist who is against homosexuality and you have a tattoo to let people know this is exit only? Like, what are we doing? Like, I totally understand what was the point of that, but whatever, that's what he did. So now we are in 2003 for the elections for parliament. He is running, and I'm watching these clips of his campaign, and it's very reminiscent of Donald Trump's campaign in terms of saying things to manipulate people, people to get them riled up to vote for you. Him talking about things that are not factual just to get people to be able to vote for him. And he said really crazy things during his campaign, like on interviews about talking about gays and blacks, Jews, women. A lot of very offensive things, and it got to the point where the Finnish media was just like, hold on, we not airing this shit. We not publishing any of this stuff because it was absolutely outlandish and inappropriate for them to put these things out there. Now, throughout the time that he is running, he is still doing drugs and he is still doing alcohol. And somehow, some way, he gets elected to parliament. They do say that he is the person with the fifth most votes within Finland to be elected in parliament, which is absolutely crazy. After just the few clips that they showed of him during his campaign, which was insane. He even went to go on to say that the president during the time was a lesbian with no facts or whatever. But if he said that, he knew that he'd get people riled up because it's just like, well, why would we want to re-elect a lesbian? Now, all that happens, and unfortunately, him doing drugs and alcohol is getting much, much worse. So now he has an exhibition match with a friend of his where he's in no shape to be in the ring. And also, he has been so heavily into the drugs and alcohol that this fight goes really, really bad for him. Now, he goes home and he's feeling depressed about it after losing that match and just looking like a complete asshole. He ends up going home and drinking and taking a handful of pills to put down his mouth. Now, his wife sees this and she's trying to get this away from him. And then at some point, he goes and grabs a gun and the gun fires off. Now, it fires off and no one ends up getting hurt. But his wife at the time ends up running out of the apartment. But when she gets back, she noticed that he's slumped over onto the ground and he had already swallowed that handful of pills. Now he is in a coma for quite some time and ends up suffering with brain damage from pretty much about trying to commit suicide. And from returning from damn near from the brink of death, he has suffered with brain injury. So like, even though he had recovered, he didn't recover 100%, and he was still part of parliament and not necessarily moving the way he did. He's not thinking the way he did. So people were able to see those big changes due to the brain damage that he suffered from taking all those pills. So now he's resigned from parliament and he has to serve 4 months in jail. Now, after he returns from jail, he's back to doing drugs and alcohol, back into depression due to him not being able to wrestle or fight anymore. He's not able to be doing TV appearances or anything regarding parliament. So he is feeling depressed. Now, all he can do is pretty much from time to time do bar appearances, and he would just run up the tab. And he also fell into major debt due to buying black market drugs. Now, here, his friend is trying to go celebrate for a birthday. He goes to his house. Friend has his own key to his house, and he goes to open the door, and the chain is still locking the door from the inside. His friend senses that something is wrong, so he ends up calling the police. The police come over, breaks through the chain, and they come in, and they see him laying in bed. Now, at first, the friend thinks, okay, he's probably just sleeping. But when they get closer, they realize that he has passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And this was back in 2010. Now, when everyone in the end is talking about his legacy, no one's really saying positive things. Like, in terms of wrestling, not necessarily positive things. He wasn't able to really make his stamp on pro wrestling like a lot of other people. Even though he was in the ring for a short time, there's been some people who's been in the ring not too long, but been able to make somewhat of a lasting impression. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case for him. However, for those who were Finnish in the documentary, they said somewhat kind of maybe a little bit positive things about him and how he's had somewhat influences on some people in terms of Finnish politics. Now, this episode was actually pretty eye-opening. Something tells me that although I did enjoy this episode, I feel like this is short in terms of them keeping everything in 1 hour. There had to have been more shit that they could have packed into this. I feel like I might have to do my own research just to see like what else was going on. He even wrote a book that I just kind of wanted to see some like little excerpts from, where he kind of made up certain things about his life that some people can attest to, and he was extremely racist and, you know, calling black people the N-words and talking about homosexuals and all these things, where I'm just like, how did he get away with any of this stuff? I have no clue. I am gonna look to see if I can find any other information regarding Ludvig Borga. I think this was a great idea to do him as a topic, because I do feel like some of these wrestlers who haven't had too much time to be in the spotlight, some of them have some really incredible stories that need to be told. Now, next week we do have an episode on Big Van Vader, which I'm really looking forward to. I think that's going to be very interesting to hear what people have to say about that. All right, you guys, thank you for watching my review. I will be back next week with another review on Dark Side of the Ring. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check out this episode. It is on Vice TV, and it comes on every Tuesday at 10 p.m. I'll see you guys on the next review. Bye.